Hey guys, it's me Daniel, and today I'm going to do something pretty cool. I've done this one before. Wait, no, I've taught about this dude before. Turn to 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 14 to verse 19. Yeah, 19. So, Ezekiel's prayer. So, background knowledge. Hezekiah, one of the greatest kings of Judah. So this is the split after the northern kingdom of Israel rebelled. The northern kingdom of Israel rebelled against King Rehoboam, Solomon's son, and then that was the last of the united monarchy of Israel. And so today, I'm gonna teach you about King Hezekiah and his awesome prayer. So, if you take history class already, you know who the Assyrians were. One of the biggest, earliest empires. So they were destroying everything in their way. They've already conquered the northern king of Israel, Syria, Tyre, just to name a few. And they were big. They had an iron king conquering Judah too. King Hezekiah came into power right when Israel fell to Assyria. And, knowing kings that conquered other countries, they're not just content with one. So they had shit for Judah. Hezekiah's military was really bad. However, he was one of the most faithful kings of the Lord. So they were advancing super duper far. So here, there's a map in my ESV Bible. Where's Jerusalem? Right here. So if you go to a couple chapters before, that the king of Assyria was besieging Lachish with all of his forces, and that's right here on the border between the Philistines and Judah. So, but he didn't conquer Jerusalem, the capital. So the Assyrians, I'll show you this page. Are from all the way up here. They ran all the way down here, like around right here, went right here, but they didn't conquer the capital. So they're far away from their home, right? They're actually south of Jerusalem. So that means they were able to conquer much of Judah's territory. I don't know if they got that territory back, because trust me, previous kings before Ezekiel were great warlords, but they weren't exactly the best believers in God. However, some of them were great warlords, but then fell. Like King Joash. I told you about this dude before. Restored God's temple, made a couple bad decisions, got assassinated. So Hezekiah's military problem is so severe that the Assyrians are able to get south of Jerusalem. So they basically steamrolled through every single country that they've gone, except Judah, because they've passed on seeing that, because they just couldn't conquer him. Why? Because that's where our story comes into play. Hezekiah was in great distress because Assyrians didn't have any mercy for anybody, and they were going to destroy them too. At least that Hezekiah thought. So it shows that God had intervened for Hezekiah. Do you know how big the United States Army is? It's around here. It's right in here. So, the entire military, including the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, is approximately 1.3 serving men and women. 1.3 million serving men and women. Around those are 460,000 are active duty personnel in the Army, 321,444 airmen and women in the Air Force, 182,000 in the Marine Corps, and 66,000 in the Navy, and 42,000 in the Coast Guard. So, basically, 1.3 million people. That's a lot. However, the Assyrian king didn't have as much because his country or kingdom wasn't as big as America. So he only all his forces is 200,000 people. That's a lot of people. That's not enough. That's not enough to beat America. However, that's a giant war machine back then. So, it steamrolled with 200,000 men. And then they steamrolled into the Promised Land, destroying Hezekiah's defenses, and then conquering Israel. They head for Judah. So Hezekiah's prayer, because he was in great distress. I had just told you about this, and then God did something miraculous. Do you know subtraction? I'm pretty sure everybody does. So take the subtraction problem. 200,000 minus 185,000. Just do the math. Do you know what the answer is? So that's 200,000 minus 180,000. 85,000 actually. So just take the zeros at the end away. It's just 200 minus 185. So only 15,000 Assyrians were left. Out of such a great multitude, they just became down to dwindle because they blasphemed against God, and God does not allow that. Then right after Isaiah said, the great prophet Isaiah said, and he predicted Sennacherib, the king of Assyria's downfall. So he was assassinated by 2 of his sons. So that is really bad. Because they had failed to conquer Judah, that made other people laugh at them. And because that's a really small country compared to where they were. And then at that point, Babylonians or Chaldeans or Chaldeans started taking over. It's pretty amazing how fast things can happen. Just like the Babylonians, how they fell to the Persians, and the Persians fell to Alexander the Great, king of Macedonia, and then king of Greece. And then after that, there was a bunch of kingdoms, 4 or 3 kingdoms that split into his kingdoms, and then Roman Empire come and steamrolled them all. And then Vandals and Huns and Visigoths sacked them. So, and then the Western Roman Empire is no more. Then Eastern Roman Empire, faster and faster. Byzantine Empire conquered by Ottomans. Ottomans conquered by other people, which became Bulgaria, and etc., etc. So, you see, the world is always changing. God is not. Because, from the beginning, the only great civilization was, Egypt. And then they were one of the most independent countries because they were the breadbasket of the ancient world. Most countries, when they conquered them, they left Egypt largely alone, but they just had it as a province because, they didn't want to harm any agriculture exports to their country from Egypt. So why am I telling you about all these countries? Well, because some countries didn't just conquer other countries. It was like no man's land, and then they just took it for themselves. Our king of Assyria, he was too greedy. He bragged that he was like a god himself. That if you put your faith in him, you would get infinite resources and stuff. That's false. He was killed by 2 of his sons. That's crazy. God didn't get murdered by Jesus. So you can tell that there's a difference. So make sure not to brag and be humble. That's definitely important. And also, Happy New Year, guys. First video of the year. So if you guys like this video, give a thumbs up and subscribe and ring the bell below. But before you go, I have a joke for you guys. The joke is, what's the difference between a psychologist, and a magician? The answer is, because a magician pulls habits out of rats. So if you guys, oh yeah, I already said that. Bye.